So welcome everyone to the fourth event of Asia Global Cultural Studies Forum. Are we recording by any chance? Is it being recorded? Is the event being recorded? Coordinators, I'm asking you.
Yes, it is.
Yes, it is.
Thank you. This is a second day event, and we know that some of the guests are only coming for the second day or not necessarily continue to attend. So we find we are obliged to repeat some of key instructions in a very fast and condensed ways. So we started this event yesterday. We had amazingly enriching conversations covering various different subjects, and we have dazzling list of also presentations today by professors and students and professionals. Land acknowledgement, I think Kathy Wang is supposed to do. So please, can you do that, Kathy, please? Go ahead.
OCAD University acknowledges the ancestral and traditional territories of the Mississaugas of the Credit, the Haudenosaunee, the Anishinaabe, and the Huron-Wendat, who are the original owners and custodians of the land in which we stand and.
Thanks a lot. I'm sorry that you have multiple jobs. People need to enter as well. So as I repeat, Asia Global Cultural Studies Forum is a forum of lively discussion of Asia and Asia Global related art, design, culture, and media, and creative strategy and research. And Asia Global Cultural Studies Forum does not support any form of ethnocentric or regional chauvinism or hegemonic nationalism unfit for other vision for the future. It solely focuses on promoting cosmopolitan learning and exploration of cultures tasked with multidirectional decolonization. Asia Global Cultural Studies Forum supports emergence of other cosmopolitan research groups and fora at OCAD and beyond, based on non-hierarchical and non-exclusionary notion of regional and national and ethnic and cultural identities. This forum is facilitated by myself, and we have 4 tiers of presenters: students, professors, professionals, and activists. It's participatory forum where presenter, discussant, and audience play equally important role. Coordinates for fourth forum is Kathy Wang and Jessica Liu and Jamie Bark and Maari Sugawara. Thank you very much for your amazing contributions. Discussants for fourth event is Aaron Tong and Timothy Zhou, and I hope you continue to make a good contributions, and thanks a lot. Recording permissions need to be acknowledged. Please be advised that OCAD hosts events may be documented through photographs and video. This image may be used by the university's promotional and advertising and educational purposes. By participating in our event, both on campus and off-site, you consent to allow OCAD University and Asia Global Cultural Studies Forum to document and use your images and likeness. However, if you do not want us to use a photo of video of you or your child, please let us know. Leave your name, not your ID, leave your name and email addresses. You will be also welcome to get in touch with us via email. Let me just quickly explain the structure of our forum. So presentations and Q&A constitute a presentation. And 50 minutes given to professor and 25 minutes for students and professional. And so in parts, lecture will be delivered or speech will be delivered, and then another minutes, if it is 25, 50 minutes of lecture or talks and 10 minutes for discussion. We have 2 breaks, and roughly after 1 hour and 30 minutes, there will be a 10 minutes break. And then after another hour, let's say 2-3 speakers, and we will have another 5 minutes, and that will create a 2 break through this event today. And audience, turn off your mic during our presentations in case any environmental sound, the mistaken noises can disrupt flow of speech of presenters, and turn on your mic when you have questions and comments during Q&A. 3 ways of participating in the forum and question and comments time, as it is online forum. And you highly recommend it to turn on your video and mic as if to create environment that we are in the same room. Turn on your mic if you don't want to share your video. It's also recommended, and you can also write your question in the chat box, and our coordinator will review and then can table them. And quickly, we have a little bit of adjustment in our schedules for today because the order of our presentations have changed in a minor way. So everything remains the same, but after 4, Zahid Dozi will be speaking because originally it was placed as a last speaker, but we moved to the up. And then we decided to end our event with Sarah Mazafari's presentations, and we'll actually this one is not the okay, I didn't make the adjustment of the timetable yet, sorry about the typos here. And Max Chu, who actually did not present yesterday because of our overflowing amount of discussions and engaging discussions we had. So Max Chu will be presenting her presentation on amnesia today, right after Jahid. Thanks a lot for your attentions. And so let's, oh, this is for later, sorry. This is it from me. So let's start, open the discussions. Given podium to Professor Immony Min, Professor in Interaction Design and Faculty of Arts and Science and co-director of the Public Visualization Lab and OCAD-U. And it's joined by also Lilian Leung, collaborator and also students and Digital Futures and OCAD-U. They will be presenting talks entitled Public Visualization Lab and Receipt Project. Thanks a lot. Are you ready to share your screen, please?
Yep, I'll just be sharing off my screen.
Thank you.
Okay, hopefully everyone can see this. Okay.
So good afternoon, everyone. I'm here with Lilian Leung. We've worked together quite a bit over the past year in different capacities. So yeah, we're here to talk a little bit about the Public Visualization Lab and a project that we worked on together called Receipts. Hello, everyone. I'm an artist, educator, and community-based researcher. I'm also Cambodian. So I am an assistant professor in the Faculty of Arts and Science with a specialization in interaction design at OCAD University. As an artist, I have exhibited nationally and internationally and have been awarded municipal, provincial, and federal Arts Council grants to support my work. My research focuses on developing a theoretical framework for understanding the diasporic experience and voice through media praxis, critical race theory, and various forms of community engagement. My practice takes the form of research creation projects such as interactive installations, interdisciplinary performances, social artworks, and participatory community installations. Participatory community projects. Works include Receipts, Post-Colonial Hot Ones, Traversal Residency Program, Passing Through the Heart, Shadows, Sight, Cthulhu Scene, Powers of Kin, Everything in Place, and Taking Care of Business.
Hi, my name is Lilian Leung. My pronouns are they, them. I'm a designer and researcher. And currently I'm located in the unceded territories of the Musqueam, Squamish, and Tsleil-Waututh people, which is also known as Vancouver. I'm a recent graduate from the Digital Futures Master Programs, my master's in design, though my background is in graphic design and interaction design. My current practice circles new and evolving methods of placemaking and placekeeping and virtual reality and trans and post-media practices and interactive documentary. My master's thesis, Future Through Memory of Virtual Storytelling in Toronto's Chinatown, was a collaborative work involving individuals within the Toronto Chinatown community to create their own memory spaces in web VR. And this project is part of an overarching project and research for myself into Canadian Chinatown history and memory.
Lily and I have worked with the Public Visualization Lab to produce receipts. PVL is a research creation lab that is housed at York, Ryerson, and OCAD University. It is co-directed by Patricio Davila, Dave Colangelo, and myself. We work alongside communities to represent and communicate concerns around equity, social justice, the environment, and participation. Our lab employs visualization, curation, mapping, modeling, and storytelling through digital media. PVL is interested in fostering cross-institutional partnerships with other universities and organizations to present events, publications, creative projects, and community-based research. We work with community partners and industrial collaborators to present university exhibitions, research projects, workshops, thematic programming, experiential learning opportunities, temporary skate park activations, public video installations, and social artworks. There's going to be a video for Passing Through the Heart. This is a recent work that we're working on. It's around food. And yeah, so just cue up the video.
Just let me know if there's sound. I might just need to unshare for a second and reshare.
And
Can
Lilian,
you hear anything?
No, we can't hear.
Okay, I'm just gonna stop share for a second just to turn on the sound for Zoom.
Just sorry about the interruptions. Lilian, can you hear me?
Mm-hmm.
Lilian, your room has a lot of echoes. I think we hear a lot of echoes from your room. I'm sure others.
Oh, okay.
I don't know. There's maybe nothing we can do about it, but let's. I just want to let you know. Yeah.
Oh, okay. Okay. 1 second. And everyone see this presentation?
No.
Lab that focuses on diasporic experience and knowledge sharing through cooking. Members of PVL cook recipes from their heritage that are recorded through traditional and emerging technologies. Non-optical motion capture, photogrammetry, videography, and audio recording come together to create a dialogue about migration, community, political conflicts, mourning, healing, and transformation. We wish to highlight commonalities in transnational experiences while expanding on a specific type of intergenerational knowledge sharing. One that at once preserves approaches, information, and tradition, creates feelings for processes, smell, taste, as well as transforms, hybridizes, and responds to contexts around food as cultural practice. So within Passing Through the Heart is a multimedia installation. Within Passing Through the Heart, knowledge of practice and feelings are carried across borders. The histories that are shared between parent and kin, aunties, sisters, brothers, and chosen family are guided by multi-generational narratives that consist of bodies, things, events, and environments. This workshop applies a series of different data recording processes to represent dialogues weaved by collective experience to create an interface for diasporic identities to talk about migration, community, political conflict, mourning, healing, and transformation. These technologies include photogrammetry, non-optical motion capture, videography, and audio recording. All these techniques come together to support the oral testimonies, object-centered narratives, and transmedia storytelling.
So next I'll be introducing Receipts, which was a work that Immony and I collaborated on as part of the Bentway Safe and Public Space initiative. Just a brief disclosure for this work. There are descriptions of anti-Asian experiences, which can be like involve violent and dehumanizing gestures. So I just want to have this bit of a trigger warning that there's no like visual graphics, but the testimonies you may hear and stuff may be troubling. So the work that we've done, these are some articles from March 2020 at the beginning of the pandemic to around November 2020, which is when this work was displayed. So in addition to the direct health impacts of COVID-19, we also experienced a parallel shadow pandemic of racial discrimination and violence, housing precarity, homelessness, and negative effects of isolation. These occurrences disproportionately affect our vulnerable communities. For example, Asian diaspora communities have seen troubling intensification of racism that have had negative impacts on personal safety. So as a result, we created Receipts, which is a multimodal interface that receives via voice, video, and or text, and anonymizes, archives, and performs on a web and in public setting the testimonies of people that have experienced or witnessed anti-Asian aggression in public spaces. At its core, this project is concerned with addressing safety in public space by focusing on the social and technical aspects of recording and publicizing testimony. We hope to build on this prototype in order to develop a more robust and flexible tool that can be modified and employed by equity-seeking groups to influence political decision-making. I'm just gonna play this video. So this video does involve testimonies from individuals of anti-Asian assault or aggression. So just a heads up for anyone.
Walking with my child on Dufferin Street near Dufferin Grove Park in February. We saw a masked East Asian man get heckled by a passing car. They called him Chink Flu.
I was stunned silent. My smile left my face, and not knowing what to say. I hurried along, a grown adult, feeling helpless and humiliated by kids. Creative, intelligent, funny, racist kids. And that was when he was coming to walk closer to me. I could hear it, and when I ignored him and we walked directly past each other, that was when he turned and he spat in my face, and that was a real shocking moment, as you can imagine.
Most comments were about what Chinese people ate and called us dog eaters or bad eaters. Others were about how dirty most of mainland China was, and how they weren't surprised that the virus came from there.
No words, just viciousness. There was a person walking towards us who saw it. No comments or even a moment to acknowledge what just happened. Just quick curt steps away. The spit didn't even hit us. It was just the gesture. I stared at the aggressor and held eye contact with him as we walked away. For a good 30 seconds.
The next day, I decided to post the video on my social media channels and speak up about my experience. It has become a sad but necessary reflex to record your own trauma and share it widely to hold racism to account these days. And even then, justice is never guaranteed.
So growing up in BC, my Chinese Canadian identity did play a large part in my life. Of course, things like Cantonese culture, as Cantonese language speaking and things like food and stuff like that, played a large part in growing up. But these thoughts of, belonging and othering hadn't really come up within the past few years. In this time, my own work has been centered on learning more about Chinatown over the past 2 years, which has begun as an endeavor to learn more about Chinese Canadian history, but also only intensified and broadened during the current times we live in. So kind of in the context of this, and also a lot of the stats and stuff we've been seeing, like even I'm originally from Vancouver, and last year and just recently there was a stat from the Center of Study of Hate and Extremism from the California state displaying 117% increase in reported Asian hate crimes in Vancouver, which has given the city almost the title of the hate crime capital of North America. And I think where we usually feel like a lot of the intensify, acts of racism may happen, further south, that at the same time, this title, while troubling, is, not very surprising. And I think we're kind of at a time now where, where Canadians are just nice and polite. There's a lot of underlying problems and issues that we need to identify within our own communities and speak up about. And I think this work is a very interesting example of how that can continue to evolve.
Yeah, like when I stand in front of the work, the text and the computer generated faces illuminate the shipping container at the Bentway. The stories from individuals who have experienced anti-Asian racism scroll across the screen as Watson, an AI speech-to-text, demystifies the doubt that these sentiments and actions occur in public spaces, in our neighborhoods, to our loved ones, to people who we don't know yet. What we can see through these stories is the hypervisibility of faces, the racialization of the pandemic, and an anonymized voice asking you to feel the weight of their words. Seeing receipts at the Bentway brought forward all these complex emotions I have for myself, my family, the Montreal Khmer community, and the student population at OCAD University about moving through public spaces, moving through anger, fear, confirmation, and healing.
And for myself, I joined the Receipts Project from September, and it was displayed between October and November at the Bentway. So I was collaborating with the lab, the Public Visualization Lab has been a rewarding experience. And my role was being able to interview a lot of individuals that took part in providing their testimonies, which also provided, a mix of both anger and frustration, as in these individuals share their experience of anti-Asian racism during COVID-19, but, also hope and determination to be heard. A lot of these individuals, were very, not enthusiastic, but very determined to be heard, right? And not to be silent, which was, very inspiring, though the experiences they suffered were, should not have happened at all. So Receipts was launched between October to November in 2020. And since then, anti-Asian hate has only intensified as the pandemic passes this 1-year anniversary since the first lockdown on Turtle Island. And community-led initiatives have also come in support of the Asian community and how to better our elders and one another. This care comes in the form of mutual aid and even providing the abilities to speak while we're apart. So the testimonies provided as part of Receipts were all done in English via interview or text submission, though we did translate all of these testimonies into the individual's actually second language, which was Mandarin, Tagalog, and Vietnamese, rather than what you may see as, the more popular or highly spoken Asian or East Asian languages. We kind of chose to instead translate the actual second language of the actual individuals that took part to kind of best represent them, and that their communities themselves can see themselves reflected or also have more broader access to the testimonies provided.
Yeah, so this work applies technologies and processes that are commonly used to recognize the face, voices, and bodies as ways to protect the as a way to protect the identity of individuals who wish to share their experience, to bond, heal, and provide strategies. We are working on developing a different type of recording, one that applies computer vision, speech to text, and character reenactment to protect the immigration status, professional networks, and personal relationships of participants. And this platform was developed with the intent of offering it to other vulnerable communities outside of the Southeast Asian diaspora on Turtle Island. Visualizing these anonymized accounts humanizes the experience and memory, the rasp of the AI voice, the movement of the reenactment actor's lips, my lips, is echoed through the container, words that I'm too familiar with.
And addressing public safety within this work and allowing individuals to anonymize this testimonies while creating and even speaking to individuals that took part in the project. For myself, I were kind of struck with the strange sense of both wanting to be seen and unseen at the same time. Speaking to individuals that they're like, they shared it with their friends. And of course, people may say it's like, oh, it's not that serious. Like, you don't need to make a big fuss about it. So, there's both the desire to be heard, but, perhaps knowing, depending who we're with, whether those testimonies and reports are taken seriously. So this work, which anonymizes the data, provides people this opportunity where they may be in precarious situations as well to share their testimonies. So, from even my own experience and working here, that I feel like there's always this measurement when we see things even in social media, are our own experiences tragic enough, or are they brutal enough to be shared, or perhaps they're not legitimate enough to be shared. So this anonymization of these stories provide both safety for individuals with the absence of the body, yet with the use of voice. And hearing these stories from individuals that, range from different, levels of aggression, microaggression, and to assault and stuff, it both validates my own experiences that you think it's like, oh, it doesn't have to deal with race, but, a lot of people, say the same thing, that, this is something that we kind of need to address. And I hope it gives people the confidence to voice their own experiences as well as this continues to develop.
Yeah. For some context, I'm physically distant from my family and my home city, which is Montreal. In the summer of 2020, I was searching for ways to remain present. I found this group. It's a mutual aid group. They have a Facebook group called the group d'entraide contre le racisme envers les Asiatiques au Québec. It's a group with members who are sharing their experiences during the shadow pandemic, their accounts of increased vulnerability and visibility. Members were sharing their encounters with racial discrimination at Costco's, Korean markets, metro stations, and other familiar locations. In the comment sections, strategies were being shared, condolences were being offered, and emotions were visualized, while threading records to support identifying actions against offenders. Being in this space at the Bentway being in this space online, in this Facebook group, inspired and initiated a project proposal to develop a way to safely record and share testimonies after events have occurred, a space to listen and understand how gestures, body fluid, spit, and rhetoric were weaponized. As I write this, those overwhelming sentiments are felt again through my body. And it's the intensity of this moment where I'm concerned for my loved ones, my community, and people who I don't know, people who think twice about how they move as their bodies become increasingly more vulnerable during this time.
And from sort of my own experiences and research and hearing Immony's experience, which echoes a lot of my same sentiments, in the past year and a half, having spoken with a lot of youth and elders alike, a lot of my own research involving Canadian Chinatowns has been, really heartbreaking to hear the anti-Asian racism for, a lot of elders growing up, many individuals who are children from the, initial sort of pioneers of Chinese Canadian society in Canada, that, that seeing their parents, grandparents live within the Exclusion Act and themselves, living and growing up at the end of the Exclusion Act, and facing these same fears, very late in their life, in their 70s and 80s, is very, upsetting. And that, highlights that these stories don't exist in isolation. The events happening now are not new, only being intensified by something, that's been growing, sort of unnoticed by people or unheard from people in mainstream media. So I feel that reflecting that this moment's provide individuals a lot more time to reflect on their own identities and roles within a community. And as we've seen, there's also, a lot of reemergence from a lot of this injustice in the solidarity between other racialized and marginalized individuals, like the Black community and the Indigenous community. Like, while things are very difficult, I feel like a lot of these communities are closer than ever almost, in the way that we kind of fight in solidarity for one another. So though our experience is our own, coming together and organizing together has a lot change to come to fruition, and there's a lot of work to be done. But I think projects like Receipts create new opportunities for individuals to safely share their experiences and be heard.
Thank you for having us here.
Yeah, thank you for having us.
Oh, wow. Thanks a lot for the presentations. Again, extremely timely, and I appreciate a lot to, again, for the expose of, again, the story that which can be marginalized easily, and also as Lilian addressed that there's a lot of confusion. Should we talk about that more openly, or should we just let it go because it's going to be just temporal and etc. But I think the expose of these stories and experience are seemingly quite important tasks, and you guys have tackled. So I was a little emotional again after looking at some of, again, the best montage of those, the images that Lilian collected. And let's open the forum for discussion. Anyone please have any questions and comments? Please raise your hand. Use the raise your hand button. Abunette, please.
Hi, I just want to say, first of all, thank you for that presentation. Really amazing work and so important, so many things that I'm thinking about. To start off, I guess I'm wondering what the response has been from people who have been walking by and engaging with this work.
Immony or Lilian, your collaborator here.
Yeah, maybe we could talk a little bit from our observations. They do each from our observations with Lilian as well. But the time that I've spent at the Bentway, there is folks who have been walking by, stopping, experiencing the work, really listening to the words, experiencing the recording, and it's the words get reinscribed in the space, right? So it's bringing these experiences, those words that, and it's addressing the doubt. That's the main bit, right? The doubt, and it's from what I've seen, it's very clear, right? sharing yeah, it's even hard to talk about it, but yeah, so you could see it when people experience it. We were very actually, the folks at the Bentway and internally in the lab, we were talking like, how's this going to be received, and are there going to be complaints, and at one point we had to make a decision, right? We were like, these are the words that exist in the public. We know the words too well. So Lilian?
Yeah, from my own experience, which was a lot of my work was done interviewing a lot of the different people that participated within the interview, within the work, and getting their testimonies and having a kind of conversation with them. And then seeing how once the work was released, how a lot of these individuals shared about it and talked about it online, that I feel like, as mentioned in the presentation, there's a lot of conflicts going around, like internally, in conversations, like, do I want to be seen or not seen? I think it's kind of that strange paradox where it's like, this needs to be heard. And some people feel very confident having their face there and being sort of the face to kind of carry, their intentions of like, this happened to me, and I'm telling, like, everyone needs to hear about it. So some of the people we spoke to, have spoken to a lot of news outlets already too, and been featured in the news. Others, I feel like it's maybe a more private thing of like, oh, I don't really want to make, like, I don't want things to like explode or, grow out of proportion, but I feel like they need to be heard. That there's a lot of varying degrees of wanting to be seen and unseen at the same time. But I feel like overall the reception of the work by participants have been fairly positive, that they were really excited to, see their words reimagined in this type of way. So that's from my own experience.
Thank you.
While we are waiting, please watch. Oh, there's a hand here. Priya, please go ahead. And I have a comment, but after Priya, please.
Yeah, my question is about the first project, passing to the heart. So I'm kind of curious to know about the choice of technologies, because I see that you've used a multitude of technologies like photogrammetry, and you said motion capture, videography. So I want to know, like, the decision behind like choosing these, plus like how do you think this helped bring this help communicate the relationship with food in the communities that you depicted?
Hi, Priya. Priya is also an RA on that project and did amazing work. And we were trying to do this work and these workshops during the pandemic, and so we were doing it online. And the selection of technologies, I think they're like ways to think of the body as a recorder, right? And a recorder of experience, a recorder of knowledge. Gestures get recorded, they get repeated, they get shared between generations, between different communities. There's this like tether between us and our homeland, right? So but through food, right? So there's ways to create that tether, or to keep those connections active. And so this investigation around the body as a recorder is we tried to select technologies that try to get as close as it can. And motion capture, it tracks articulation of the body. And we're doing things that folks didn't intend this technology to do, which is like, they didn't develop motion capture to record a Cambodian man learn how to make Cambodian crepes with his mom. And so there's a lot of firsts we're doing like through these types of recordings. And we're experimenting too, right? So trying to shape these workshops where we're talking about our relationships with each other, with our communities, with our homeland, and through discussions around food and this weird cooking show. Yeah.
I think there is, I'm just, browsing who has a, yes.
There's a comment in the chat box, which I will just bring to the table. Jessica Liu to everyone. Observation or response for Lilian. I am very refreshed by your work in collaboration with Professor Immony. There is a role of creating the space for others to express, moving yourselves aside to allow the voices of the community to come through. Observing, I connect this also to your earlier background in commercial work, somehow which I think you were able to bring out in an important way, here to the community. Thank you.
Lilian, do you have anything?
Yeah, I can respond to that. Yeah, like my own background being graphic design and interactive design, I did work, in agency and doing a lot more commercial work, which is my background, and kind of coming into digital futures into the master's program, I've shifted a lot of that concentration into community work and being much more interested in, using sort of the skills that I've learned to kind of better community projects that, don't have maybe these budgets or have like this experience or guidance to do. So that's one example, but I feel like the work when you work in the community, I feel like the effects that you have on the community are so much bigger, right? Like your connections with people are much more intimate. And I feel like, you kind of develop like a much deeper relationship and long-standing relationship with people and how to like really better them. Where, sometimes commercial work can just be like a quick thing and then it disappears into the ether. So, I've been very interested in doing a lot more community work, especially even participatory work. Actually, rather than just telling people what to do, actively getting people to collaborate and work together. Maybe things aren't as refined because everyone has opinions on everything, but I feel like that's kind of the way to go to make sure, everyone's kind of heard, and kind of how I think we should, in my opinion, that shifting a lot more attention into community work, especially now more than ever. Yeah.
I can see the Chin-Young's hands, but do you mind if I go ahead, because I've been waiting a lot. So let me go ahead first. So I just found that actually the receipt project, the decision of sites and the technology or medium you have used, the way you archived and presented are very fluid in terms of the choices you have made anyways to make this as a conductive public art projects, which engaging as well as interactive and participatory. I may have missed this part of information, but I was curious about the how you chosen this particular site, which in fact I didn't write down the name of the place. It's a Toronto somewhere, I guess, and you may have pronounced it, but maybe I did miss it. But why you chosen this particular space is my first question, and the second question is, in fact, I really do agree with the Lilian's account of the conflicted desire to be seen and not to be seen, the dilemma we all have. And I just want to convey the complex emotions that we have with regard to this kind of project. Quite brave, but then it caused a lot of ambivalent feeling in some ways, because I imagine myself and genuinely affected physically, emotionally, intellectually about witnessing all these events. And so in fact, myself has been try to be keeping low profile whenever I need to go out, because you don't know what random public are perhaps. I had a fear of being assaulted, to be honest, as just being an Asian subject in this space. But then if I ever imagine myself passing by this project, and of course the project which is very much interventionist, and what is this trailer? Wow, this is going to be talking about some story of crime. I will be conflicted whether I should be going inside, listen to it, or I should pretend that I'm not part of it, because many Asians, or being a victim of assaults, being traumatized means that they often feel like they're, surrounded by this panopticon, and there might be different reactions, but there are also one of the reactions that people don't want to believe and don't want to be engaged in, because it's so scary to deal with the overwhelming situations that and that you are seemingly feeling targeted on. So I just can imagine that what are complex emotions that audience would feel, including myself. Should I go in listening to it? But I'm Asian. I don't want to be seen as Asian listening to this, the Asian narrating about their victimized, because I just want to be invisible in this space, that kind of emotion. So I'm just throwing my thoughts, and that's basically it. Do you have any responses to kind of audience response that I have? No response.
Well, I agree.
Fear, I the term for it, fear of engagement. I think.
Fear of engagement. I fully agree, and it's that shift. But then thinking about, I'm gonna, it might be connected to receipts, but it might be more connected to my role at the university and how to use the voice, the practice. And so during the time before receipts was being developed for the bent way, and the bent way wanted something else, I talked to my collaborators, I talked to Lilian, we were like, this is a pressing moment, and we should think about thinking about developing this a way to provide a different recording, a way to allow folks to collectively record their experience after things happen, and thinking about the levels of comfort with disclosing identity, information about identity, information that can come back to you. And that's that bit about being seen, being unseen, wanting to participate, but also being safe, right? Keeping things on different levels. And the bit about the university, I was furious. Like, there was, when this was happening, I was furious about all this talk about reentry and people's discontent about online teaching and doing studio work online because of the different of how bodies were being registered, right, in public space. We can't design that. We can't control what happens between the commute to campus and your home. Those are things out of the university control. So I would go into meetings and I would say, this is alarming. This is happening right now. The vulnerability of different bodies, diverse bodies and voices, it's something that's emerging. It will intensify. And if we don't take that into consideration, if we don't design a plan to include that context, folks are going to run into these types of exchanges. So I was angry and very vocal. So every meeting I would bring it up. in the chat. I would always bring it up, and that's how I think that's like yeah, I think there's a lot of things there, and the mobilization, the ways we mobilize and we support each other is like so crucial right now. So I'd love to talk a lot more about stuff, but yeah, I see a question.
Yeah, like deal with or confront. So yeah, the fear of engagement. We should engage, otherwise there is no way out. So yeah.
And vocalize and resist. I just
yeah. Lilian, you have any comments, or Jin Young can go ahead and also, and yeah, Lilian, well, yeah.
I just have a quick comment, but I guess it's like, for me, it's like, for me, I've noticed the most between like generational gaps too. Like, I feel like, you know, not between our grandparents to our parents to even ourselves. Like, there's a huge gap between if we're like children of immigrants or immigrants ourselves. I feel like there's a huge shift of, you know, a lot of us will be like, you know, don't cause trouble, like keep your head down, kind of, we're just trying to like live in this country. So I feel like, you know, when it comes to reporting incidents like this, that, you know, a lot of older generation will be like, no, like, don't, this happens all the time, like we don't need to talk about it. Where, you know, a lot of younger people will be like, no, like, this is not acceptable. So I feel like, you know, over time there's this huge shift where a lot of younger people too are speaking up. And I think that's also empowering a lot of people in other about it, or, you know, I thought this is just how things are. But it's like that normal isn't normal at all. So I think, you know, we need to speak up, and I think this is also having those conversations with parents and grandparents is really effective way to, you know, kind of share the same thoughts that we have. It's like, yeah, we do need to be heard, and then maybe, you know, things like receipts don't need to exist because everyone feels safe to, you know, just openly provide their testimony. And know it'll be taken seriously and stuff like that.
It's absolutely important point, but let me just don't talk. And Jin Young Kim, you can talk about that.
Hi. First of all, I want to thank you both for this work. I imagine that it's a tremendous amount of, because it's to on receiving end, just hearing about these news are simply exhausting. And then doing something about it, I just admire your energy and initiative of taking on the challenge of addressing this. Because I do agree that these stories has to be heard. Not necessarily, I think the work's audience is directed to the general public, not necessarily to the Asian bodies. So I think in that sense, it's totally a meaningful place to actually have this voices heard in the public space. I was wondering on a sort of personal level, how do you find working on these projects emotionally and psychologically, and also how do you find this way of sort of working on activism while you're teaching and while you're making your own work and practicing your own professional duties sustainable? How do you sort of deal with, you know, the sustainability of making sure that you are, you know, staying true to your integrity as, and also, you know, wanting to contribute, because this is also a personal crisis for myself as a professional and an artist, and also wanting to contribute to this like great and also very needed call for activism. So yeah, I just want to hear from your own experiences.
Lilian, would you like to start?
Sure. Yeah, I can go first. If I'm being really honest, it's very frustrating, and it's very like, how many times have I just been like so angry all day or like venting with Immony. Immony is my primary advisor for my master's as well. Of just like my own research involving Toronto's Chinatown and having to hear about these ongoing struggles every single week, every single month in the place I'm researching, Chinatown, but in the broader scope of like the Asian community, Asian Canadian community, while also hearing every horrible thing that's happened during COVID, and carrying a lot of like trying to digest literally everything. I think we've digested so much during this pandemic. Like I've aged mentally like so much, but yeah, it's very difficult. And I think it highlights a very weird spot within academia and the institution as well. Because I'm really interested in volunteering for a lot of Chinatown initiatives as well. And sometimes it's very weird separating my academic work and volunteer work because it's like I don't want to suddenly turn everyone in the community is like a research topic. Like that's not like I feel like when we're in academia sometimes it feels like that, or we have like I'm trying to separate these two things because people aren't consenting to being researched. Like what are you supposed to do? But at the same time, it's my own lived experience. So like the things I know from, speaking to people in community meetings and doing a lot of like on the ground canvassing and like stuff like food bank stuff, like a lot of stuff I do in the community is from like me helping out at the food bank and speaking to elders and stuff like that. And I think it's very difficult separating this kind of academic part of my brain and then the side of my brain that just wants to be like a volunteer and community worker and just kind of provide for people. And I think there is a lot of overlap, and there's also a lot of like spaces that there doesn't need to be overlap unless it's the actual community members willingly engaging in that and contributing to that type of research. But yeah, no, it's been very difficult. So that's my part.
Interesting. Yes.
Yeah, and I think like that makes total sense. But also like reaching out into your reaching out or creating support networks, right? Like these networks of care that are that I've experienced like a lot of my immediate network that provides a lot of emotional support, a lot of professional support. They're my mentors, right? Like they're people who trusted me and who have provided me some type of strategy, created a space for me. And like Richard Fung, Patricio Davila, Andrea Fatona, Robert Diaz, folks who modeled some type of mentorship. And so I think that's like when like part of the thing I want to say that when we were working on this work, and Lilian mentioned that I was their supervisor, the type of imaging for that relationship came from what I experienced, the type of mentorship that I've received, the type of sharing of ownership, collaborating on works together, the RA position that Lilian held, and also like like we've co-written applications together for projects, co-written grants. There's like this deep connection. So what I'm trying to like stumble around is that the type of support and emotional support, but for professional support you can get is from these relationships, these mentorship relationships, or maybe not mentorship, but like these relationships we could foster with each other, and how can we model it in ways that on our own terms, right? From our own experiences, from what we receive, and what we experience. So.
Junyoung, is your hands is something that you want to comment on or want to come back?
Sorry, I forgot to lower my hand, but thank you so much for your responses. I just, it feels very resonant the way Lilian put this internal conflict between being an academic and being a person who just wants to make a contribution. I think I really empathize with that position in relating to the community work. Thank you.
I just want to also second about internal conflict, and again, one of the comments that that Lilian happened to make, which we all know what the meaning of. That's the internalized cultural stigma that coming from your parents and grandparents. Just don't talk about it, just keep it low profile. It's kind of what I have talked about yesterday or through my opening remarks also, that there is internalized censorship and oppressions that we all inflicted on, which is partially culture, also legacy, which I think we need to also deal with and address in many ways. And also, I think the discussion on the tension between the field and the academic work, and also echoes discussion we had yesterday with the Kim Jung-gi curator, that's tension between the field and establishment, how he shifted between two places, constantly negotiate the boundaries. So yeah, that was amazing presentation and discussion. I think how we are doing with our time, coordinators.
Just right at the mark to move on now.
All right, wonderful. Thanks a lot. Thank you, Immony, and thank you, Lilian. That was nice opening. Thank you. And the next presenter is Priya Bandodkar, and my pronunciation is not perfect, so the Priya can correctly pronounce her name for all of us. From Digital Futures graduating, and title of presentation is Activating Indo-futurism. Priya, are you ready to share your screen?
Yes. Hi everyone, I'm Priya Bandodkar, and in today's presentation, I'm going to share my master's thesis, Activating Indo-futurism. This presentation is in the form of a video, so I'm going to share the video now. And please let me know if you can hear the audio with this. I'm going to share it. Welcome to this presentation. My thesis is titled Activating Indo-futurism, applying a lens adapted from post-colonial futurism. Firstly, I would like to thank my advisory team, Kate Hartman and Dr. Cindy Paremba, for their continuing support throughout this work. I'd like to start by telling a bit about my background. I am Priya Bandodkar. I did my undergraduate degree specializing in animation in 2010. Then, I worked for close to 10 years in my native India, developing my skills as a multidisciplinary designer and animation specialist. Prior to joining the Digital Futures program, I was a design team lead at a multinational creative consultancy firm where I designed visual narratives and innovative media creations for international clientele while supervising a team of designers. The decision of pursuing a research that was directly connected to my roots only sprung up a year ago while I was halfway through this master's program. In fact, before moving to Canada, while I was in India, I did not have a good understanding of my relationship to my Indianness. It took moving across the world and finding the distance that was geographically and intellectually afforded by this program to start processing my relationship to my Indianness and to Indian culture. This thesis is my way of both discovering my relationship to Indian culture and laying out this journey in the form of this research so that hopefully others can benefit from it. Around that time, I also encountered the concepts of Afrofuturism and indigenous futurism. I learned that post-colonial futurisms provided a revived perspective towards their respective cultures and created a possibility for reconciling the culture of the past in a vision of the future while responding to impacts of colonialism. It occurred to me that, like African and indigenous people, Indian people come from a part of the world with a history of colonization. I wondered if a similar idea of cultural revitalization could be applied to India, and what I discovered would help me develop the same kind of connectedness towards my culture. I was surprised that although the idea was not completely absent, there seemed to be little academic discourse around Indo-futurism as I had come to think of it. I asked myself, if there was Afrofuturism and indigenous futurism, then why not Indo-futurism? This thesis activates a largely unexplored futurism discipline for India called Indo-futurism. It proposes Indo-futurism as a means for Indian people and their descendants to respond to colonialism in India and its ramifications in post-colonial times. It imagines an Indo-future, an alternative future for India, wherein India was not colonized. The lens of Indo-futurism has multifold intents, from utopian optimism to satirical critiques, addressing a range of issues. This lens is rooted in India's cultural history. This research is situated in a cultural perspective that is best comprehensible to Indian people and their descendants. Its primary target audience is international youth of Indian descent, including those who may not be born in India but have a familiarity with the cultural and societal status quo in India. I do not intend to portray a perfectly utopic depiction of India, as this would leave out the unpleasant realities of social situations that beset contemporary Indian communities. Indo-futurism presents an approach to envisioning a future unique among post-colonial futurisms that critically highlights toxic social predicaments in contemporary India. I apply thought by Marina Gorbis from The Future as a Way of Life, of the future maybe being the only safe place for highly charged discussions where people can glean a bit from each other's thinking, unpack each other's assumptions, and start to build a shared understanding. To provide a safer space for discussion for difficult topics that haunts the contemporary Indian diaspora. This research activates Indo-futurism by creating 5 Indo-futurist artifacts that are interactive, created using contemporary digital media that serve as examples for the Indo-futurist lens. The use of digital technology is an opportunity to recontextualize aspects of culture in a way that might be appealing or engaging to the youth of Indian descent. A contemporary, technologically savvy approach, which is arguably at odds with traditional values of conventional Indian culture, reimagines and presents it to the Indian youth in an accessible way. Gateway to the World is a virtual reality realization of an Indo-futurist artifact that decolonizes and reimagines a colonial architectural gateway using speculative design as an Indian-inspired, Indian-built gateway. Apart from being a literal gateway, it acts as a metaphorical gateway to the Indo-future and an introduction to the concept of decolonization. The interaction in virtual reality situates the participant's body in a transitional space from the real to the decolonized world, as they pass from the gateway of India to gateway to the world. Virtual Sanskrit Archive is a speculative design for an archive in virtual reality created for the preservation of the ancient Indian Sanskrit language that was lost through colonialism. A Sanskrit verse is visualized through gestural performance using the Indian classical dance style of Kathak by an artist and rendered using volumetric video in virtual reality. This experience is interactive, reacting to the viewer's movement. This artifact leverages the notion of presence in virtual reality to metaphorically indicate being in presence of the ancient language. Gestural performance is used to express the language beyond the words within the verse, making it reach people in more ways than one.
भवन्ति भावी दिनानि आशा प्रभया ज्वलन्ति अतः सुदीनं
Colonizer is a fictional social media application from the future that lets the user assume the role of colonizer from future India, set to colonize a space planet. Just like the colonizers of Earth from the past, the space colonizer has the power to select or discard colonizees from this newfound planet. By embedding dehumanizing colonial policies into a fun, thoughtless gamified application using dark design, Colonizer compels users to confront acts of colonialism and its repercussions that haunt Indian people, especially some marginalized communities, even in the present day. Skill Lab is an interactive physical installation that asks the user to select their preferred skin tone using a tactile interface that mimics the design of digital augmented makeup applications and projects the user's selection onto a mannequin head in real time. By adding materiality to present-day digital photo touch-up applications and bringing them into the physical, this critical design artifact makes users, especially the Indian diaspora, confront colorism prevalent in contemporary India through its manifestation into a physical form. A sari like Draupadi's is a virtual reality installation inspired by a story from India's ancient literature, where an unending sari keeps reappearing as it gets unwrapped of a woman. This Indo-futurist artifact is a concept for a future fabric that self-replicates as it gets pulled off the wearer. Inspired by the disrobing of Draupadi from India's ancient epic, the Mahabharata, this artifact intends to critique the treatment of women and at-risk people in contemporary India. Situated in a fictional world using critical design, a sari like Draupadi intends to prompt discussion of this difficult subject in a safer space afforded by this future. I seek to open up the space for other Indian artists, designers, thinkers, and creators to delve into and hope to inspire a feeling of community in them. For this reason, I conclude this project with an Indo-futurist manifesto. The user testing of this research with members of the target audience led to a series of meaningful discussions and reflections. I hope for these conversations to continue to manifest. In conclusion, I hope for this research to inspire the Indian diaspora to explore and make Indo-futurism their own, and, as a long-term objective, foster a feeling of belongingness in Indian people and a reconciliation in the youth of Indian descent towards Indian culture. Next, I'm just going to play the Indo-futurist manifesto that emerged through the findings of this research. So it's a 5-minute long video. I'm going to play it right now.
Imagine a glorious Indo-future world, an alternative future timeline where India has thrived and was never colonized. A world that speaks to the difficult issues of our actual present, with both utopian optimism and satirical critiques, while addressing the needs of this fictional future. On the coast of Mumbai, where you would see the gateway of India, a testimony to British colonialism, we have the gateway to the world. Using advanced technology and the brilliance of its people, in this alternate future just a few years from now, India has crafted this Indian-inspired architectural marvel that transports people and goods anywhere in the world in the blink of an eye. 50 years on, in this alternate enlightened future, are you still finding strange hands groping you? Fear no more with a sari like Draupadi's, a nano fabric that self-replicates as it is unwound. Leave your worries of being manhandled behind. With a sari like Draupadi's, the wearer will never be disrobed. Looking forward 30 years, are you still not satisfied with your skin color? Here, in Skin Lab, anyone can choose how they look. Want to look more fair? You can. Just use this simple device to pick your perfect tone and let the technicians do their work. A few short decades later, India is exploring the stars. Indian ships are on the way to bring brave adventurers to new frontiers. Of course, some alien life may have to be displaced to make room. These difficult decisions have been made easier through a game. Colonizer is here for the Indian public, to have their say in choosing which aliens to keep and which to remove from the glorious new space territory. Jumping ahead a century, we see a find of ancestral proportions. Ancient recordings stored in an archaic technology have been decoded by our brilliant scientists. What seems like a synergy of moving typography and a speech unheard for centuries.
अस्मिन् स्वल्पकाले
An
सत्यमयी
ancient language has been reincarnated. Though none still alive understand what it means, this symphony of words and movements has enchanted a generation. So, what does imagining an Indo-future, or Indo-futurism do? For you, and for Indian people everywhere. How does imagining a future help anyone or anything? Indo-futurism is here to empower the Indian diaspora to respond to colonialism and address its continuing impacts in post-colonial times. Indo-futurism calls for artists, designers, scholars, writers, technologists, creators of Indian descent to form a community of Indo-futurists. The lens of Indo-futurism imagines an alternative future for India without its inglorious colonial past, in order to help Indian people reorient their post-colonial, post-apocalyptic present. Indo-futurism reclaims aspects of India's pre-colonial culture that were lost through colonialism by reincarnating them in an Indo-future. Indo-futurism highlights the pressing social conditions in contemporary India by critiquing prejudices prevalent within Indian communities. Alongside the idealistic ambitions found in other post-colonial futurisms, which it seeks inspiration from, Indo-futurism offers its own unique characteristics, illustrated by critical and dark narratives that allow discursive interventions. Indo-futurism refuses to recreate the fabled, lived, golden bird era, as this kind of a utopian depiction is not useful in addressing the social situations that beset the present-day reality of India. Indo-futurism speaks to a diaspora that shares a relatively uniform cultural experience, creating room for a majority of Indian descendants that might be spread across the world to join in. Indo-futurism is a heretofore underexplored space for Indo-futurists to delve into and give Indian people a face in the future. Indo-futurism inspires a feeling of belongingness in any who are of Indian descent, and sets the stage for these people to creatively engage with the potential of Indian culture.
Wow. Thank you very much for the powerful and well-designed presentations with a lot of, I think, intentionality there.
Yeah.
Let's unpack and I have a question, but yeah, please yeah, raise your hands those who has a question, but maybe I will put myself as a second after the those who has a question, raise your hands, and again you can use contact. I think there was a question. All right, I don't notice any hands, so let me just take advantage of this. Okay, so I just want to deal with echo one tiny bit of things that I didn't discover in the previous presentations, more pitches we had and things. For instance, when you use Sanskrit, the dancing Sanskrit figure, I just realized how animating it is in relation to the overall kind of objectives of this project, a visual, textual animation of Indo-futurism that your project involved in, with various multiple visual, audio, oral, and textual sources. And in fact, the reason why I found the dancing Sanskrit
figure is quite fascinating is because it resonates the fan that Jin Young Kim used yesterday or captured in her project yesterday's presentation. I don't know whether you were there, because the fan was actually giving, in the absence of people, were actually animating the space and then create a haunting effect. But I just wonder whether you have a comment on when you make a decision on creating this. I think there might be particular cultural meaning with the Sanskrit in relation to maybe colonialism and the way that you want to highlight the importance of this language also. And then you put it in the part of, as a part of dancing figure, who dance itself is a very huge, importantly cultural things for Indian culture, right? That everyone dance and sing, and Bollywood movies, we all know that. And also, I think in connection to that, I was wondering if your image of touching the sari or fabric that was unrolling, again, it's kind of fascinating choice you made, which is also giving that kind of impression of continuity and extremely animating, very dynamic. So thus echoing the futurist vision of you quite well. Any responses? Did I read correctly, or yeah?
Yeah, so I can like talk about these individual ones. So the thing is that my, first of all, my intent was to create separate examples. So I talk about different intents of Indo-futurism. So one of them is where I am reclaiming a lost cultural heritage, but I'm talking about Sanskrit, which was like a language of the masses before, like a few centuries ago. But then it kind of slowly disappeared. The usage reduced, especially during the colonial period when English was introduced in the education system and made as the official language, and the use of Sanskrit reduced. And then I kind of I kind of like, that was the first, actually that was one of the initial projects that kind of inspired me to get into this. So where I was seeking inspiration from indigenous futurism, where they kind of use their cultural past to and then to kind of like reclaim it in the future. So that was one of the initial explorations that I did. So, and the reason of having the dancer and the motion was I wanted to express the language in a non-conventional form, where I used gestures, because the thing is, for me, I don't really understand Sanskrit as well. Like my mom can read it, I can't read it, I don't understand it. So it's like, I can see like it's reducing by each generation. So I thought it would be interesting to kind of, because it would be kind of unrealistic to say like bring it back and let everybody start using it suddenly, because it's very difficult, but at least to keep it alive in some form. So I thought maybe use an unconventional form like art, like performance. Like this was a Kathak dance performers movements that I captured, and then I superimposed his body with the letters of the verse, and that's how I kind of like expressed that language in a different form. So my intention of this creation, this artifact, was that people can kind of find different ways of reclaiming the culture. It doesn't have to be like the language has to like come back and everybody has to start speaking and suddenly, because that's kind of like a little difficult, but like something like this where people remember that they had a rich culture, and this is like, instead of just forgetting it. So that was for the Sanskrit one. And for the sari one, so for the sari one, I use a critical design approach where I'm kind of putting the user, the participant, in this little uncomfortable spot where you're kind of like trying to like unwind the sari, which is to kind of make them realize and kind of empathize with this whole action and kind of like think about it, subconsciously to that. So that's my intention with some of the artifacts, but I use critical and dark design to kind of like make people go through that process and kind of understand that it's probably not, it's how it's harmful and how it's kind of like how it needs to be addressed. So, and the reason of like creating that the motion, like the reason I put the user, like what I do is that I'm sorry. So what yeah, it's just like there are like a lot of thoughts. So what I did was like, I wanted to create this avenue for interaction for the user where they kind of like, like inviting them to interact with it, because I feel that creates like instead of just passively watching something, but being in that space is kind of a different, when you're in that space and when you're actually like with your hands, like in VR interacting with it, it creates a different impact. So that was my intent of like choosing that medium and choosing that action.
Oh, I see. The touching the sari, that action is to evoke that interaction.
Yeah.
Oh, okay.
Yes.
It worked to me, definitely. I just want to clarify one thing. So I know a little bit of history of Sanskrit, but then right now, I think the Avane can answer this one. I asked the same question about the language because it's a very ethnically diverse country. It's a huge country, India is. And then there is many languages are spoken, like Punjabi and Bengali, and so there's no one common languages except English. So I was always confused about what is official language. There are different layers of language. So I'm just just factual information, please. Yeah.
So English is like the official language, and in like courts and governments, and that I think that was introduced during the colonial period. Hindi is the national language.
National language.
Yeah. Yes, and then there are regional languages, and Sanskrit is so Sanskrit was developed in India, and it was interesting when I was talking to one of the user testing candidates, and he had studied Sanskrit for during his education because he's studying the science of Ayurveda, so he had to study Sanskrit for that, and he was explaining the construction of the language is such that when you utter words, it actually replicates the emotion you actually feel. So when you're like saying the word, what it actually feels is how it kind of expresses when you say it. So that was very interesting to me. So I kind of realized how languages are like the languages that are developed in particular region are built to address like the surroundings of that area. They're built to address like the experiences and emotions. Whereas when a foreign language comes in, it's okay, like you adapt to it, but then it somehow is not enough to like express all these other aspects of it. So that was kind of an interesting finding for me.
Thank you. So Aaron has a question.
Hi, Priya.
Hi.
Hi. Oh, thanks for that. That was crazy. I loved it. I have a bunch of questions. I'll start with the use of the speculative fiction and these imagined Indo-futurism. It's not presented as a multitude, right? You're presenting one future. In a way, you're kind of using the speculative world to colonize the future in order to understand the colonized present. So I wonder if you can speak a little bit of that. I also find it interesting that the skin tone changing, the skin lab one, having fair skin becomes less of a aspiration and more of an appropriation. Like you're almost like orientalizing lighter skin in the context. So you're kind of reversed to understand again the kind of the using by colonizing the future, understanding the colonial situation of the present. And the third thing I wanted to get a comment on is the gateway to the world, right? You're going in there but then you're also by positioning that gate in the future, you're making that the space itself the world, and then letting other things actually aspire to it. So I wonder how it's so detailed that you found all these things to kind of to colonize these futures in order to understand the situation right now. So how, I was just wondering if you could comment on that.
Okay, I might ask you to repeat your question later, but I'll start with the first one, which was about like using the timeline. So I wanted to unite these 5 artifacts, which were kind of like very different in like flavors, and some are like very optimistic and some are dark and critical. So since I wanted to kind of like make this accessible to the youth, I decided I kind of like came up with the manifesto, and I used these to activate it. But when I was looking at world building, when I thought I could put this in a future timeline. And I was looking at this one game called Microscope, and it was like an activity where you kind of like put in like different periods, and then you kind of like the period can be dark and light. Light is like a good period, dark is like something bad happens. So and then it kind of like fluctuates. And then I looked at like history, and that's how it actually works. It's not always like predictable, like only good things are happening. There's like always like a fluctuation. So I thought it would be interesting to just position all these like different like ranging from optimistic to dark on this one timeline, but over like a period, and then kind of like put them together and kind of unite them in this world. I would actually love to like expand and explore this further, because this is something I did at the end of my thesis. I would like love to like tease out more of these aspects, but this was like where I stopped right now, where I kind of put them on the timeline and I connected them with the narrative. And I think the second one was the skin lab one. Okay, so the skin lab one also, so that was like that was again critical design, where I kind of like asked users to select the skin tone they thought. Like when in the user testing, I was like, you all can select, you just have to select the skin tone that you think is your preferred skin tone. And then I kind of like I think like it was like the reaction was varying for that, because like one of the users who had internalized the user was self-identified as dark skinned, and how they expressed how this was very disturbing for them, because they have internalized that it's kind of like wrong to have dark skin because of like the kind of perception that's around them, which was interesting, because mostly like otherwise people were like, oh, I get this, like, you know, I get this is, but for somebody who's actually like facing that it's kind of very different. And I kind of like realize how that was interesting and how it affects different people differently. And I don't know if that answers your question, like this, like, okay.
I want to come back to it too, but
okay.
Answer third question if you grasp, yeah, the essence of third.
Yeah, and okay, and the gateway to the world. So that was like I thought, so because I was introducing Indo-futurism to a community, like to a community of people who might not have had enough like familiarity with futurism discipline. So this is something that was new to me. Even when I came to OCAD, I just learned about it last winter, about like futurism and Afrofuturism. So I thought like that would be a very good way of establishing what decolonization means, like how you could apply it. So what I did was I placed the user in virtual reality. You are in this space where you're on the side, you're on one side of the archway, which is the colonial architecture. You see it, and as you pass through it and go to the other side, it's kind of changed, and you are in this in the future world, and the archway is replaced by this Indian inspired archway, and it kind of like establishes what it means. Like you remove the colonial, like literally, like it doesn't have to be just to architecture. It could apply to a lot of things, but this was like a very good way of clearly establishing what decolonization means.
Okay, I know Aaron can come back to it, but I also want to just make a comment on the skin lab issues. And so I was fascinated by your kind of treatment of this issue through your project, because skin tone changes, or preferring whiter and paler skin in places once colonized, is some topics that we have discussed before. But it's kind of reality seemingly that really affect the structure of desire in many ways. While overall, if we deal with it in the critical discourse, of course, we suspect that it is actually colonially implicated. So people should be ashamed of wanting that skin tone differences other than what they are born with. So there is that critique still valid, but at the same time, what I noticed about the culture, the shift of the culture, and the meaning of the culture and behavior, actions, and choices are changing according to economic, political, cultural, historical shift. I think it's seemingly that you are suggesting that skin tone choices should not be overly racialized or politicized in a way why not just take it as one of the beauty choices, the way that we sometimes like to bleach our hair. My German friend wanted born with blonde and she wanted black hair. So she dyed it to black hair and no one criticized her or suspecting her to be, you wanna be Asian. And she wanted to straighten her curly hair. And no one criticized or claimed that she wanna be Asian. So why not we have those freedom to just maybe, put a different lipstick or different eyeshadows or different hair colors, different blouse for today and tomorrow. So it is totally possible in the different scheme when there is a sufficient decolonization taking place, the original meaning disappear and then it kind of covered with a complete different tone. It's just a matter of choice. There's nothing colonial or racial about it. It's what can happen. So I found this quite disturbed at first, but I find this quite refreshing, but I'm sure it causes a lot of arguments and tensions, I think.
Yeah, a lot of times it doesn't convey in the same way, so that might come across. So I try to also for that, I don't know, for that reason, just be a little clear at the beginning that in the manifesto that there is satire in this narrative, and so because a lot of my friends, who also when I was user testing, some of them said that people won't get it, and people might be like, how can you promote such a thing? But there's so much I can do. But I think I feel it's more effective when you kind of put it, for me, I thought this was more impactful to put it in the sense where people kind of interact and then kind of constantly understand that, okay, and kind of decide instead of being hey, this is wrong. And this, because that's been also going on, that's in that sense. But I thought this was a more disruptive approach that I'm trying to take for to address this kind of, and I really like your take where you said, oh, it's like an aesthetic choice where you can just decide which I hope that we reach that point.
I think those mindset is going on too. Simply aesthetic choice. And so we have two hands. I don't know who's first. Melis
was Jin Yong.
Yeah.
Sorry, it was Jin Yong first. Actually, she raised her hand before me.
Jin Yong go first, and Melis, please.
Okay, I just have a very brief, I guess it's more than a comment than a question, but the skin lab is very I was disturbed, and it was also funny. But I find that I can digest that in the context of virtuality, and the sense that the digital media and the creation of avatar in another scheme of universe, which is a virtual reality, it sort of kind of puts us in that world where we don't have bodies, and the body is only a choice, and everything about them, about how we carry ourselves in the world can be a choice digitally and virtually. So it kind of promotes this idea of disembodiment of self, of political self, of cultural self, or whatever self that we carry in the physical world. So I don't know, it's an interesting play, a realm of how we construct the sense of self in that virtual reality, and also having the potential of that technology to create this kind of another level of empathetic exchange between, I guess, different personalities and objects and the world itself. So yeah, that was my observation. Thank you so much for the presentation, Priya.
Thank you.
And Melis, with the interesting one.
Sorry, it was just well, basically what I wanted to say was kind of said in the end, but even so, I'm just gonna say whatever. But so I thought for the skin tone, I really agree with Aaron and Jin Yong. Through and through, it's very interesting, because I know that in India, I don't know much, but from what I know, fairness of the skin has always been kind of, not always, but especially right now and recently, it's always been this beauty standard. And And I thought that it was fascinating that instead of leading the Indian youth to accept their natural darker skin tone, which could have been done by many people, it's like, yeah, you should accept that you have a darker skin tone, or that fairness is not natural for you, or whatever. Even though like there are like multiple skin tones in India. I thought it was like a smart choice from your part to just tell people, you know what, just choose who, like whatever skin tone you'd like. And especially as Jin Young said, it's creating an avatar and a digital self is such a new thing. It's come with media, it's recent, right? And I feel like nowadays there are so many people that actually, and especially young people, that actually recognize more of themselves within, like through their virtual self than their physical self sometimes. So I don't know, I thought it was such an interesting choice of yours, and I thought it was very smart as well, because it really reflects today, right? So yeah, thank you.
Thank you.
Any response? So yeah, it was really honest and on point response and your comments.
Sorry to just jump in like this. My raise hand button isn't working for some reason.
It's okay, mine doesn't either.
Okay. Thanks, Priya, for that presentation. You had mentioned towards the beginning that you've been thinking about your relationship to your Indianness and Indian culture. And so I'm wondering if you could speak a little bit more, if you don't mind, about what that relationship looks like. And I'm also wondering if you've noticed a difference in the relationship that people who might have been born outside of India have with Indianness, as opposed to someone who was born in India. Like, do they have different concerns and priorities when it comes to decolonization? Have you noticed anything like that?
Yeah, so like I can talk about the contrasting relationship when I was in India versus like when I moved out. I guess when I was in India, I was mostly frustrated and angry about a lot of things that were happening around me, and it was and I to a point where I was feeling helpless about like certain issues. I had no idea how to deal with it. So, and I've spoken to a lot of friends about like some of these, like I was talking about the sari like Draupadi's as well, where I was talking to my friends and they were like, it just feels like the only option is to like leave the country, like if for a single woman and all that. So that was like a long discussion, but so there were a lot of issues that I mostly, and I kind of felt like a disconnect, I would say, because the way like the culture was introduced to me, it was just like, this is how it is, you know, like from your family, and the way you have to do this, and you have to, like, without really understanding the meaning behind it, which actually makes it fascinating. So I guess like after I got this distance, I was able to process that, and I was able to actually understand the meaning behind certain things, and that kind of like I'm actually like really proud of it, and I feel very fascinated by it. So I'm really happy also that this like thesis helped me discover this and kind of like demystify this these perceptions that I had about like my culture. Versus I don't think I'm in a place to like comment on like how somebody who's not born in India would like, because I'm like, yeah, it's beyond my but you can answer to that if you feel like.
Yeah, no, that's fair. I was just curious if like during your process of research you had encountered other people who might have shared their experience or not, but that's perfectly fine. I'm thinking about how one of the issues that I keep coming up against is people thinking that I'm not Indian enough. You know what I mean? Because like growing up, all my friends were white. And so there's certain things where like my Western friends won't understand, because I have had aspects of different like Indian culture passed on through my family. And then things that my family and people in India like don't understand, because that part of me has been influenced by my being born and raised surrounded by people here. And so I'm just wondering if what that futurism would have to look like to incorporate all of those different sort of struggles. I don't know if that question even makes sense, or if I need to just like put it out there for my own sake, just to like get it. Yeah, that's
yeah. So I wanted to address, like I've addressed this in my paper, where I'd say that this is kind of open to anybody of Indian descent who, because even though some like someone might not be born in India, but they have enough exposure to like family discussions and like traditions and that is totally, I think that's totally valid. So I do not like I'm very clear about this. So this is like for any who is of Indian descent, and you don't have to just like be born in India to be Indian. And what was the other part of it? Sorry, I missed the second part.
I can help you with that, because I asked a similar question like what Abhinav just asked in the past. I think it's Priya, sir. So the you actually, one of your manifesto is about the you want to empower the diaspora Indian, while I actually also asked question yourself, to what extent you feel you are Indian and things. It's also determined.
Oh yeah.
And then because you were like really advocating for diaspora Indian, while your answer was, oh, by the way, I haven't moved from India long enough, and so I feel 80% Indian, yet 20% of here is what your answer was. So in fact, it's you're dealing with two different words, as you know what I mean, right? Because India located there, and you born with that legacy and heritages and baggages that you wanted to perhaps undo for some reason, and so you decide to move to other places, and you're experimenting, seeing yourself in different environment. I understood exactly what you mean, because that's the experience of many of diaspora, those who choose to move and live in different places, because they have one way or another to critique of their own cultural heritages or baggages and conditions they are inherited with. So anyways, I think that's open up our own contemplation and discussions.
Absolutely.
There was some hands, but do you want to come back, or anyone? I just can't let it go. Let me just throw the hand. Okay, Melis, yeah, go ahead.
It was me.
I'm just clapping my hands.
Oh, what's it? Display the icon. Sorry, my literacy.
No, I was just going to keep this. Sorry, Jessica. I'm going to keep this quick. I was going to respond to Yoga and Priya's comment about it being the skin tone and the altercation of the physical body being acceptable in a virtual space, because with the project, with the VR that Priya designed, helps us like understand our bodies as more machines than your identity. And identity becomes like the information you feed in it, like hence the kind of colonized future that you're providing into it, right? So it presents this kind of possibility for us to consider everything else outside of this context in the form of digital data. It's another way of thinking. So anyways, that's it.
Yep. The culture for revision and transformation, alteration, anytime. Thank you. Thank you very much for the wonderful presentation and thought-provoking issues that you have raised. Thanks a lot. Yeah, clapping.
Thank you.
Okay with our time. Oh, it is a break time for us.
We have a break now.
Okay. So how long can we break?
It should be 10 minutes, so it's 57 right now.
Okay, 50. So people come back by when? Do you mind us writing down what time people should come back by in the chat box so everyone can see it? Because I can have plug around me. Thank you very much for everyone who were so enjoying and attentive for the first section of our discussion. Please come back for Christy Chen's presentations. By the way, Christy Chen's is a better winner of fine art as a sculpture installation of this year's thesis. And Jahid Dozi, again, my pronunciation of his surname is